Video has emerged of a Chinese Coast Guard warship blocking a Philippine patrol vessel. The Philippines says it was carrying out a return patrol, but China says the area is part of its territory. The two ships nearly collided in disputed waters in the South China Sea on Monday. This comes as the Philippines and United States are wrapping up their largest ever joint military exercise. What happens when a 321-ton Philippine patrol ship suddenly finds itself staring down two Chinese warships 8 times its size, while a U.S. destroyer silently watches from the horizon on August 11, 2025? That exact nightmare unfolded at Scarborough Shoal. But the real question is, did the showdown spiral into open fire, or did restraint prove more powerful than missiles? Further attention in the South China Sea, where China is accusing the Philippines of intruding at a disputed Scarborough Shoal. Beijing also claims one of its ships was rammed, prompting a response with water cannons. China's Coast Guard says more than 10 Philippine ships were spotted around the SHO. On Tuesday, the incident comes a week after Beijing declared it would turn the shore into a nature reserve, drawing strong opposition from the Philippines and Taiwan, who also claim ownership. Stay with this video, because once you hear the words broadcast over the storm that night, you'll realize why this clash may shape global naval strategy for decades. Before we move on, I'd like to ask you a small favor. If you appreciate this content, please take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Over 98% of you watch the videos without subscribing. It costs you nothing, but it makes a huge difference to us. So did you click the subscribe button? Great. Thank you so much. Now back to the video. Imagine a 321-ton patrol ship tossed by heavy seas. Its deck slick with rain while just a few cables away. An enemy destroyer looms in that moment. Retreat looks like humiliation, but defiance could mean annihilation. This was a choice facing the Philippine BRP saloon on August 11, 2025, as the waves hammered Scarborough Shoal with storm-force winds. The small patrol vessel, never designed to stare down, warships press on, knowing that every decision carried consequences, not just for its own survival, but for the credibility of its nation. Scarborough Shoal is more than a rocky shoal jutting from the South China Sea. To Filipino fishermen, it is a lifeline, a place where nets bring in the catch that feeds families up and down the coast of Beijing. It is a marker of territorial control, claimed and patrolled with overwhelming force for global trade. It sits along sea lanes where tankers and container ships funnel billions in goods every single day. That is why an interaction between a single Coast Guard ship and a Chinese destroyer was never just about these two vessels. It was about control over one of the most contested maritime spaces in the world. The encounter escalated quickly. The BRP Su-1 spotted the Chinese Coast Guard ship CCG 3104 first, a vessel already larger and more heavily armed than the Philippine patrol craft. But minutes later, sensors and eyes on the bridge picked up something dark on the horizon. A Type 052D destroyer, cutting through the mist, bristling with missiles, with displacement nearly 20 times greater than the small Philippine ship. The mismatch was absolute, the imbalance impossible to ignore. Instead of one adversary, the Swan faced a pair working in T, a patrol blocking the shoal and a destroyer shadowing close enough to strike at will. Sea conditions made the confrontation even more dangerous. The storm sent swells crashing over the bow, throwing crews against steel rails and tearing loose rigging fishing boats that had been working. The shoal scattered in panic as the larger ships closed the gap. Several nets were ripped from the water, entangled in propellers, or simply abandoned for those fishermen. The skirmish was about far more than politics. Each torn net was a day's work lost, each crushed outrigger. A blow to survival thunder lit the radar screen in bursts of static, drowning out signatures. Each time the UN tried to track the destroyer on its display, another storm cell blocked the view, leaving only an uneasy guess of position. The ship's radio hissed and crackled under interference, but Mandarin broadcasts came through clearly enough warnings that the Philippine vessel was trespassing and should withdraw immediately. On the other wave, band fishermen transmitted garbled cries as they tried to outrun the chaos. All the while the destroyer edged closer, white spray shearing off its massive hull, dwarfing the ship. It stalked. The imbalance in hardware was staggering. The Philippine Coast Guard vessel was lightly armed, equipped with nothing more powerful than small autocannons against it. Moved a Chinese ship with vertical launch cells ready to fire long-range missiles radar, powerful enough to guide them with precision and naval artillery that could crater the ocean. Floor shots were never fired, but the potential hung heavier than the storm area itself. Even without combat, the asymmetry of forces turned minutes at sea into a test of nave. Yet not every player that night revealed itself openly. Over the horizon, but close enough to detect the USS Ralph Johnson monitored developments. The American destroyer's presence was undeniable, and both Manila and Beijing would have noted it. Its distance was deliberate, near enough to be a check, distant enough not to be trapped in the same close quarters. Confrontation for the crews at Scarborough. The standoff played out over the radio. Chinese voices declared that Su won, and the local fishermen were acting as intruders inside what Beijing called sovereign waters. Then came the counter-transmission from the U.S. Channel, a calm statement about respecting international law and upholding safe navigation. These exchanges underlined the deeper question: who actually sets the rules in disputed waters? Nations with warships ready to enforce their will, or a broader system of maritime law that claims to protect all who pass? The 15 minutes stretched into 30, and with each passing moment, the danger grew. Still neither side fired. Neither ship forced the other back with violence. Finally, as the storm worsened, the destroyer eased its shadowing position. The Swan held its place scarred by the clash, but unbroken. 45 minutes after it began, the encounter ended not with explosions, but with strained radios, drenched crews, and fishermen who returned home with less to feed their families. For China, the message was power, for the Philippines defiance, and for the United States steady pressure without tipping over into conflict. But beneath all of that, the incident showed something else: that restraint, not escalation, determined the outcome that night, and when sea lanes and global trade depend on fragile stability. The choice to hold fire can matter more than the missiles bristling on deck Scarborough. Shoal is not simply a cluster of rocks. It is a test of whether raw power or international law decides who controls the world's oceans. The clash showed that dominance at sea is not always measured by weapon ranges or ship tonnage. The USS Ralph Johnson never firing a missile demonstrated how presence alone can anchor deterrence and reassurance for allies watching closely. Visibility became its strongest shield, stronger even than missiles held in reserve. But the larger question remains hanging. If the next confrontation turns violent, will international law still define the line, or will force redraw the map? If you liked our video, please hit the like button and subscribe to our YouTube channel.